Well, welcome everybody. Appreciate you all coming on. If you can, turn on your cameras. Don't be weird. Um, we all want to see your faces. Want to introduce Justin Dossey. He is we've been friends for I don't know, like 2 years now.
Yeah.
And we're now business partners in St. Louis, doing some real estate up there. And I mean, he shares and gives away whatever the hell you guys want. I mean, he's an open book ever since I met him, never held back. So I bring him on. This is a time for you guys to be selfish. Whatever it is you want to know and everything, pick his brain. That's why he's here. He's gracious enough to want to be here, answer all your questions. And more than anything, Justin, I brought you on because of your expertise in direct mail, right? We're all in real estate. And to me, truly, there's like two avenues for marketing, right? It's cold calling or direct mail. There's a bunch of other ones, but I feel like those are the two primary, channels for marketing. And you being a pro at the direct mail side, you owning a company and everything, I wanted you on here to kind of share your lessons, your experience, your knowledge, and all that.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, if you can introduce yourself and the
Sure.
company you own.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know a decent amount of you guys from other masterminds or just being here in St. Louis or, all kinds of different ways I've met people. But for those of you who I don't know, like John said, I'm Justin. I live in St. Peters, Missouri. I've got a wife, three kids, two dogs, a cat. Um, I like camping, go camping a lot. And I own not only Ballpoint Marketing is kind of like where I spend most of my time, but I also own a company called Call Porter, which is a live answering service for real estate investors. So you're not missing your calls and dropping leads and all that kind of stuff. And then I am a part owner in a mastermind here in St. Louis, Inner Wealth Global, where I've met some of you guys here. And then I also am an owner in two real estate endeavors as well. So here with John in St. Louis, and then we do some stuff down in Louisiana as well, down in Baton Rouge. So yeah, I'm pretty busy, got a lot going on, but direct mail is where I spend most of my time and where I help most of our clients is in that area. And John sent me some questions, but I'm also open to like John said, literally whatever you guys want to know.
Mhm.
Happy to answer those questions. How do you usually do these calls, John? Do you just want me to talk
So
for a little
yeah,
bit?
no, yeah, I'll go asking you some questions. What we'll do
Yeah.
is we'll kind of I'll go through the questions that I have. We'll go back and forth, and once we wrap that up, then everybody, whoever has questions, raise your hand, and we'll just start tackling those as or you can drop them
Cool.
in the chat, whatever's convenient. We'll go from there. So, how long have you owned Ballpoint Marketing?
It'll be 6 years this fall, so about 5.5 years right now. Um, is kind of when I came in and took everything over on a day-to-day basis.
So, I mean, needless to say, you've kind of have some experience with direct mail, right? Like you've done it a little bit.
Yeah, we send right now anywhere between 500,000 and 600,000 pieces a month that are all handwritten for clients all over the country, and have done that for the last 5 years or so. It's obviously grown. It hasn't always been where we're at, but we've probably sent close to 10 million pieces of mail over the last couple of years, and work with hundreds of clients every single month on how to not only use direct mail, but make it effective, efficient, and repeatable. Kind of like John does with cold calling, right? Like he knows way more about cold calling. I know way more about direct mail than he does. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So, with all that experience, what is the biggest mistake you see investors make when it comes time to direct mail? Why is it that they struggle so much to make it work?
There's two of them. Two biggest mistakes people make with direct mail. One is not being consistent. You have to be consistent with direct mail for at least 3 to 6 months to really get any good traction in it. So you have to be prepared to spend a little bit of money and be able to make sure that you can manage that. Give you a good example. When I started, our market down in Baton Rouge was 2.5 years ago. And the first like 3 or 4 months were okay. And that was the tail end of the year. And then going into January, we lost our acquisitions person. And we knew like, hey, we're just starting to get momentum. We don't want to quit doing direct mail. But It literally boiled down to just one guy down in Baton Rouge who had to run all the leads, had to go to all the appointments, lock up the contracts, do dispo, do rehabs if we had it, like literally fucking do everything. And we made the decision to continue spending and spent 10 grand a month on mail for 3 months and got one deal. Got one deal for 30 grand in 3 months. In March or in April, we locked, once we got a good acquisitions person who could actually spend the time running the leads, we locked up 15 deals and closed on almost $200,000 worth of profit in May of that year. So that consistency starting from like November, December, and then January through March we would not have had that month had we not been consistent with it. So that's number one, is just not being consistent with direct mail. The second part is sending too small of a sample size. So direct mail is, I mean, it's like any form of marketing or anything in business that you're doing, you want numbers and stats that you can make decisions off of, right? If you're sending 300 pieces of mail or 500 pieces of mail, that's such a small sample size for you to really get any results or data that you can use going forward. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
Okay. So for us, like the way that I kind of recommend this is there's three categories of markets that people are going to fall into, right? You have your major metros, right? Your Denvers, your Austins, your LAs, I don't know how big San Antonio is, but you know, those areas like that, bigger cities that you're going to need to spend like $5,000 to $7,000 a month to get a deal, somewhere around there. That's pretty standard. LA's, New York, those are going to be a little bit higher because they're outliers, but most of those, like 5 to 7 grand per deal, is pretty standard in markets like that. And you need to be able to market for 3 to 5 months till you start really getting those results. Your secondary markets, places like maybe St. Louis, I'm just going to use Missouri because I know it, but St. Louis, Springfield, some of the more like in between areas that are under 750,000 people, probably, you're going to spend 4 to 5 grand to get a deal, somewhere around there. And then in what we'd call a tertiary market, like under, I don't know, 300,000, 400,000, smaller areas that are more outliers, like Baton Rouge is a good one where I'm at. You'll be anywhere from like 2,000 to like 3,500 bucks to get a deal typically. So for me, you know, you want to make sure, depending on what your market is, that you're spending enough to actually allow yourself to take advantage of the rewards of it and not just spending money that's not actually being useful for you.
So when you're saying those numbers, that means that it's not that you spend 5 grand and you get a deal, right? It's spending the consistent amount of money over the course of how long? What do you think before somebody starts marketing that they know the first deal?
On average, it's about 90 days.
So at least plan for 3 months of, let's say, 5 grand a month to close a deal that it could be a $30,000, $40,000 deal. But at the end of the day, right, it breaks down to an average of about 5 grand a month is kind of what you're saying, or 5 grand a deal is what you're saying?
In those major markets, yes.
In the major markets, and then sub markets below that. So I found that interesting. With those smaller markets, you go by population size. So St. Louis, 700,000-800,000 people, I think they have. You're talking about like that would be a secondary market, so the price per deal will be less.
Typically, yeah. You
And
don't you usually have a little bit better responses in those areas than you would, like San Diego is a good example. So my brother lives there. You market to downtown San Diego, it's going to be like 8 to 10 grand probably, if we're being realistic, to get a deal there. You start moving out into some of the other areas like Encinitas or I don't know, some of the other areas that are on the outskirts, that cost comes down because there's less competition, but people are also more likely to sell in those markets as well.
okay, so sounds expensive, right? I mean, 5 grand, it sounds expensive, but the upside is tremendous. So what do you think it is that, because I mean, we tried direct mail before, but we did the same thing. We got started in it and we're like, all right, we have this list. It's a couple thousand properties. Let's just send a big ass thing of direct mail at them.
Yep.
And then probably nothing happens.
Yep.
So what would be a good sample size to start with? And how often do you want to hit that sample size?
Yeah, good question. Um, you know, I will say too, like 5 grand's on the high side for direct mail, for handwritten direct mail. If you guys don't
Mhm.
know, that's what we do. We have like robots that write the letters with pens and postcards and all that kind of stuff. Like my cost per deal right now is like $2,400 is what I spend to get a deal. I have clients that spend 3 grand, 4 grand, but it's typically like 2,500 to 4 grand is where most of our clients kind of fall into. Um, what was your question again? What kind of list? Sorry.
Like, so what sample size list?
Sample
So
size. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So my recommendation when you're starting with direct mail is at a minimum like sending 2,500 pieces a month. So depending on what you're sending, that could cost you 2 grand, could cost you 3,500, just depends on the style of mail or postcard that you're doing. But that's been kind of a sweet spot for people to start. Where I met you, where I met Bar, where I met Jersey. Don't think there's anyone else on here from CCF, but where I met you guys in CCF, that mastermind, we require people to be able to spend $2,500 a month on mail because that's where we start to see things work for people. And even though it might take 2, 3, 4 months to start to get those deals and get that traction in there, that's usually a really good sweet spot.
And is that 2,500 pieces to the same 2,500 for 2, 3 months consistently, or every month a new 2,500?
Nope. So you want to hit them every month for at least 3 to 4 months before you change your list up. And there's a reason behind this. So if you think of, oh, we'll use cold calling, for example, because that's what you guys are used to working with John mostly. Um, you're not calling somebody once and being done, right? You're hitting them multiple times a day, different phone numbers. You're trying different things, right? Any form of marketing, digital, phone, billboards, mail, whatever it is, consistency is the key with it to the same people, right? Because you mail somebody month one, they might not be interested yet, right? Maybe they have some things pending or looming that might be coming up or something they don't know about yet. They might not be ready to sell. And the data that we've seen, because we work very closely with Deal Machine, if you guys are familiar with them, we sent, if you can do handwritten letters through Deal Machine, we provide all of those. And the data we get from them and that we've seen on other stuff is if you mail somebody once, the opportunity out of that list that you could get of people that are going to call in, you might have about 15% of those people call in. So let's say out of 2,500, you're going to have a total of 100 people call in, right? As an example. Not all 100 of those are going to call month one. You're going to get about 15 of those people calling month one. Month two, those numbers go up to like 30, 35%. Month three, they go up to like almost 60%. So the more consistent you can be with people when you're marketing to them using direct mail, the more you're in front of them, the more likely they are to respond and the more opportunity you're going to actually utilize out of that list instead of just like burning through a different list every single month and not seeing any traction.
And I think this is why, like, why we failed at direct mail, why so many people failed direct mail is you kind of blow your load on the first month, right? For lack of a better word, but like you just put all your money in direct mail your first month, you hit a list, nothing happens. You're like, the list sucks. Direct mail sucks. Let me hit this other list and change the direct mail altogether. I went from postcards to letters, and let me do this other list. And I went from handwritten to professional print. So when it comes to those kind of things, like, where do you start that you've seen yourself through all the years, everything that's like, start with this piece, with this type of list, and be consistent? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, good question. So if we're starting at, let me pull up the link and I'll throw it here in the chat so everyone can look at it too. But let's say we're starting at 2,500 pieces of mail. The product that I would recommend is called our greeting letter. It's a 5x7 letter that if you guys have worked with us at all, you've seen this, you've been around, you've seen it advertised, you've seen our ads. But that specific product, it's a 5x7 and it's designed to look like an invitation to something. So when we send it out, there's no name on it. It's just, or there's no like company name. It's just a first name, last name. It's a handwritten, has a first class stamp on it. So it looks like literally someone sent you a letter. They get very high open rates. And these we get response rates from like 1 to 1.5%, which if you've done direct mail, is 10 times higher than the average, typically. Like most of the time on printed bulk mail marketing, you're getting like 0.15%, if that. Like it's very, very small. So I recommend that product. It's 100% handwritten. Everything is specific to the property that you're going to be marketing to. You can get through PropStream or ListSource, wherever you get the data from. And I think your other question was lists. What lists recommend? Okay. So this is my opinion, right? This is what I have seen work very well. Most people that are trying direct mail will just go out and buy an absentee with equity list. Has anybody done that on here? All right. How'd it work? Not great. Not
No.
great. Yeah. Okay. So I am an advocate for utilizing it as a supplement to the rest of your list. So what I would start with, and I'll throw a link here in the chat in a minute that will literally show you how to pull all this out of PropStream or Deal Machine if you use either one of those. But you want to start with some niche data first, right? Some motivations why someone might want to sell. So what we start with are things like pre-foreclosures, vacant properties, expired MLS listings, intra-family transfers. So it might be a potentially inherited property, and then liens that are like over $1,000. Those five, I think it was 5 lists, are usually a really good place to start. And if you're hitting 2,500 pieces of mail, you'll probably get like 1,500 records out of that, something like that, right? Then the difference for the other 1,000 that we want to do, we'd recommend absentee with equity, but there's an important caveat to that is make sure that the owners have less than 3 properties. That way you're not targeting the Lucas Walls, right? Or the people that have 200 rental properties that are most likely not going to sell. You're targeting the mom and pop investors that might be a retirement plan for them. Maybe it's something they tried doing on the side and they might be tired of being the landlord. And we've had really good results using those mixtures of lists with that absentee with equity. So it's not the bulk of it, but it is a good way to supplement as long as you're making sure you're targeting 3 or less owners that have 3 or less rental properties.
Very nice. Now, so that's extremely helpful. My next question to you, though, is you did all this marketing, you send out 2,500 pieces. What do you feel is the investors need to be available to answer those calls? Like, what's that look like?
If you can't answer your phone, don't spend money on mail.
Very good.
If you can't answer the damn phone, really anywhere you put your phone number out. If you can't answer the phone, either hire somebody to do it, like call Porter, because that's what we do, or figure out a way to be available to answer those. There's, forget the data on it, but there's a certain amount of time, and I think it's in like 3 minutes when somebody calls you, where that decision meter or that process for them to ever call you back again goes down very, very quickly if you don't answer that phone. So if you guys are doing any form of marketing, even cold calling, and somebody's calling you back, and you're like, I've seen this play out before in our company where we just made outbound calls and an inbound call is coming in and someone's like, well, I'm on this outbound call and it's ringing though. Like, I don't give a fuck. Hang up on that one. Answer the inbound call that's coming in. That's the person that is interested. The odds of the other person answering are probably not that high, but making sure that you're answering those calls on the inbound ones is a good way that I would say this is like what John has said this to Kyle and I on calls when we've talked before, where it's like, if you don't get a contract at the appointment, you're just warming them up for somebody else. You're doing the same thing with direct mail, right? If I send you this beautiful piece of handwritten direct mail and I don't answer and you have another postcard that's just printed crap and you're like, well, guess I'm going to call this person now, right? You're moving on to the next person. So answer those calls.
Very good. I mean, it's one of the biggest things that I've seen with direct mail when we used to do it. When direct mail for us, when we first started, used to work amazing because there wasn't that much competition in the market. And I remember we would send out mail and our phones would literally melt within the first day.
Yeah.
It was insane. And we needed to start scattering the mail over the days just so we can control the call flow. It was ridiculous.
The glory days.
Yeah, the glory days. But then what was funny is that if we would miss a call, you can call them right back within 5 minutes and they'll deny all day long they ever called you.
Yeah, that
So
wasn't
it's
me.
like all day. We're like, fuck, I know you just called me. I didn't pull your number out of nowhere. Right. But it's
Yep.
nope, nope. I never called. It wasn't me.
Yep.
That
And to add to that too, we do this by default. But and if you do it through me, if you do it through somebody else, doesn't matter. Put the option to call or text on your mail pieces.
mhm.
Especially nowadays, people hate calling people on the phone. Like I don't mind it 'cause I've done it. I worked on a call center for 10 years. But the average person, if you give them the opportunity to call or text and you use Resimpli or a different CRM like that to be able to handle those text messages, same thing. You want to respond to those texts right away. You want to be just like you were texting somebody else and you're having a conversation. You want it to be very similar to that. So that's another way that you can boost those response rates and results on mail.
So that's an excellent tip, and I wanted to get into the wordings and stuff. Have you seen a change? When I first started, we were killing it with my family and I want to buy your house. My wife and I want to buy your house, right? Like John buys houses. And then we kind of started seeing a transition into businesses. Like people want some credibility. They were getting scammed and, they couldn't trust individuals. And then it just kind of, it goes in and out, right?
Yep.
So where do you see that being right now? Does it come off as something better to be, saying it more on a personal basis? Like, hey, is me, John, trying to buy your house? Or do you like having a company name attached to it or something a little bit more professional?
Yeah, so great question. So we do a little bit of both. And that's what we recommend for most of our clients. It's how our products are defaulted, is you typically want to have some sort of branding on there, even if it's just a website printed on there. Because the number one thing people do nowadays is they Google everything, right? Like if I want to know something's good, like I just bought this grill behind me over the weekend. And I was like, that's the first thing I did. I was like, I saw it at the store. And I was like, I'm gonna Google this shit and see if it's actually any good. First thing I did, right? People are gonna do the same thing when they get mail. And if they don't have a way to do that, you don't have any sort of online presence, it immediately turns people off to want to work with you. Even if it's just like a Facebook page, right? Like just something, some sort of anything to have web presence. I will say I have seen it work negatively if it's over branded, right? Um, I'll use this as an example because they're friends of mine, but Faster House, we've done mail with them. They like to over brand things, right? Everything is Faster House. Everything is Faster House. It's all branded. It has the logos. It has, all that kind of stuff. And that works to a certain point, but you want that mixture of, like John said, the professional with the personal. So the way we kind of built ours and the way we do our mail is we have logos on it if you can. We do the websites, but then the messaging is very personal. It's not, I want to buy your house, third and final notice kind of stuff that you've seen before. I think our standard messaging on that's worked the best for us is, dear John, what are your plans for 123 Main Street? I'm prepared to make a cash offer if you'd like to discuss. Call or text me at my office at this phone number. Sincerely, Justin. It's very simple. It's very non-confrontational. We don't bring up anything negative that might be going on with the property. Like we all have access to lists. We know who's a probate. We know who's in bankruptcy. We know who's going through a divorce, right? Like we don't bring up any of that shit. Um, it immediately puts the person on the defense when you do that. So you can
They feel
avoid,
targeted. They
yeah.
feel like, yeah, they feel.
My father-in-law is a perfect example. We didn't do it beforehand, but now I'm really against it. My father-in-law passed away 3 years ago. Lives literally in the house that's in my backyard. Right, it's not in my backyard, but my mother-in-law lives right there. And within a week of him passing away, they got letters saying, sorry for your loss. We'd like to help you out of this house, all that kind of stuff. Some of them were from friends of mine. And I was like, immediately, my mother-in-law was like, do you know these fucking people? And I was like, maybe. I'm not gonna tell you I do, but maybe. And like it immediately puts people on the negative. So we don't bring up anything like that at all. We might make hints when we're on the call. of different programs that we could do that we can offer for them. If we know it's a hoarder house, right? Like we have like a clean out program that includes like, you don't have to worry about taking anything out of the house. We'll take care of everything, right? That's a lot easier to talk to somebody than saying, hey, I can see your garage doesn't close because you're a disgusting person. Uh, let me buy your house, right? It's a totally different process. So very, very similar of how we'll word things on the mailers.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now you're doing direct mail, you're sending it out, you're spending all this money. What do you feel is, I guess, the experience knowledge level of the investor need to be to get started with direct mail? Like what have you seen as far as,
Yeah.
you know,
I don't know that there needs to be a specific knowledge level, but I would say you need to be comfortable spending at least 3 grand a month for like 4 to 5 months. Like I think that's the determining factor is that, and making sure you can answer your calls, right? Because those are not only with direct mail, this goes with any real estate investor I've worked with over the years. The two reasons people fail is they don't market enough or they're not consistent in their follow-up. It's literally it. It's those two things time and time again, where I see people fall out or people not be successful. It's literally because they're not consistent in marketing or they're not consistent in their follow-up. So those are, yeah, I would say as long as you can handle those and you can put the budget out there, the thing that works, like I'll be honest, 90% of my deals are from direct mail. I don't do a ton of cold calling just because I don't like it. Right? Like and I have the luxury now of not where I can spend the money to send mail out, right? And make it more repeatable. So for me though, now I've got to the point where I have enough data with direct mail on my own stuff that I know for every 2,500 bucks I spend, I can expect a deal on average. So if I want 10 deals next month, I better be ready to spend 25 grand. If I want 5 deals next month, I better be able to spend 12,500. And we're spending about $10,000 to $12,000 a month and getting 4 to 6 deals a month. So that's kind of what I look at, and why I like it so much is because it is repeatable, it's scalable. For me, like I said, if I don't want to, but if I wanted to go and get a giant team and do 300 deals a year, I have the formula to do it, but it's not what I want to do. Yeah, it's not for me.
oh, and that's why even asked that question, is because like I told everybody here too, it's not that direct mail doesn't work. It's like if you suck on the phone and you can't convert a deal, you can't. It gets very expensive. Your close rate goes from $2,400 a deal to $10,000 a deal because you can't close any of the calls that come in.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, that's why I asked that question, just kind of seeing how that, if you've seen anything kind of play out with people that say, oh, direct mail sucks. And it's like, no, you suck. Like you're
Yeah.
really bad on the phone. You
Yeah,
know, if,
that's,
if
I
you're
mean,
getting calls from sellers, right? Like you should be closing deals.
mhm. No, and you said that too a while ago, is like we don't want to, like here in St. Louis, we're not sending mail out yet because we want to make sure that we're handling the calls as efficiently as possible before we do that. Because
Hmm.
you're spending a lot of money and you want to be able to capitalize on the money you're spending, where with cold calling, or used to be texting, not so much anymore, you can spend a lot less money and more time and make those kind of mistakes and learn from it and grow into doing that kind of stuff. But any successful company that I know has multiple forms of marketing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you got to be able to diversify.
Mhm.
Now let me ask you about niche lists. So you talk about 2,500. What if you wanted to do more of a very like niche list? You have maybe a couple hundred properties,
Mhm.
right? It's probably a stack list. It's something that you're like, man, these people would be really motivated,
Yeah.
right? Because they're going through some shit. What would be the formula for something more niche? Like, should you hit it more frequently throughout the month? Should you hit it more times, like a different mail piece? Like, what would be something for a more niche list?
Yeah. No, good question. Um, Honestly, from what I've seen, I wouldn't change anything as far as the frequency or the type of mail piece that I would send on that because of how they work. The I think the important distinction of that is identifying what an actual niche or niche, I don't know how you say it, niche
Yeah.
list is, right? Um, because those lists that I mentioned earlier in prop stream, you could technically say those are niche lists those are super easy to find, right? The thing that I have seen play out with direct mail and with clients of ours is the more time you spend on your list, the better your marketing is going to go every single time. So if you spend 10 minutes buying lists on PropStream, like it'll work, but there's a difference between sending 2,500 bucks and getting a deal and spending 2,500 bucks and getting 3 or 4 deals. And I've seen that happen. I have a client in Fort Wayne, Indiana that spent like 2,700 bucks and he pulled like 6 or 7 deals out of it. But he spent
Nice.
a ton of time combing county records and finding things that are not typically marketed to, that don't have a very good and because business owners are lazy, right? That's why we're business owners. is we like to have other people help us do things. We might not want to work as much. And most business owners, and real estate specifically, will go out and buy the exact same lists and then hope for a better result. Whereas if you're spending more time combing through county data and finding things like county board orders or water shutoff reports, I don't know, the fire damaged properties, like most people don't market to those. And that's how you can increase those response rates by spending less.
Now, last thing I want to ask you before we open it up to Q&A is metrics, right? So let's say you pulled 2,500 properties. You're going to hit it for 3 months. You do for 3 months. What are some of the you said 1 to 1.5% response rate, but let's say you're not getting any calls like by the end of month 2. Do you hit it again? Do you feel like maybe the list needs to be worked up on more? Do you guys help with that, with the list, situation? Like, when does somebody make a judgment call of like, all right, this shit didn't work. Like, I need to
Yeah.
shift gears here.
Well, I guess that kind of depends because it didn't work because I didn't get calls or I didn't work because I didn't get deals. Because if we didn't get deals,
You're not getting
that's
calls.
that's a you
You're not.
problem. You're not
Yeah.
getting calls, then I would be pretty surprised unless you're in like major markets. But what I would typically recommend is like if you don't get so let's look at it this way. If your average response rate on these greeting letters is 1% and you're getting like 0.2, right? After 2 months, I would pull some new data. Could be bad data. Could be the data that's in there. And the interesting and kind of shitty thing with mail sometimes is like there's times where a month just doesn't work. There's no rhyme or reason to it. But then the next month will go crazy. And it's timing, it's the market, it's the people that you're sending it to. There's a time maybe last year, I think, where month 1 we had like a 1% response rate. Month 2 we had virtually no calls. And we're like, that's weird. Okay. Month 3 blew up with calls again. Same lists, same type of marketing, just happens sometimes. So I wouldn't go more than 2 months if you're having really bad results from the beginning before pulling new data or getting help with that. That's something we do is we do like strategy calls anytime you guys need it, any questions you have for list information, for helping pull lists, which John asked we do pull lists through PropStream through Deal Machine. We get pretty good rates on them. And but I wouldn't go more than 2 months if your results are drastically off from where you would expect them to be.
Very nice. Very
Yeah.
good. All right, guys. Well, don't want to keep taking up Justin's time. Brother, appreciate you. Thank
Yeah,
you
thanks
for
for
your
having me on, man.
time.
This was fun.
Yeah. So as if anybody starts doing direct mail or anything like that, I'll give you some feedback on why it sucks so much. But but no, this was good. I hope you guys got a lot of value. It's like everything. Everything works if you're consistent. That's
Yep.
it. I mean, there's no magic to it.
Yep.
So appreciate you all for joining. Justin, again, thank you, brother.
Yep.
And remember, Wednesday morning, we'll have our mindset call. So I'll see you all there, 8 a.m. And have a great week, guys.
Cool. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.